have some participation today. And so what I want you to do is, if you have a computer and you're on the internet, go to www.polev.com/a Rabago, that's my last name, 510. Or if you don't want to mess with the computer and you've got your phone, send a text to 22333 with, oh no, that's actually wrong. It's got to be a Rabago 510, like the URL above it. Send a Rabago 510 to 22333, and you will be able to weigh in with various things we're going to be doing. All right, going to move on from that because we're going to go to the first poll. Well, I'll go back while I try to see if we have internet. And I have a low-tech version if we don't. Yeah. All right. Come on. Oh. Where's David? I think you jinxed me earlier. We were talking about doing presentations with tech and what you do when the tech doesn't work. I'm going to try this one more time. Close out. All right. Hold on. Go. Nope. It's not going to do it. Okay. Well, we're going to go back then to this slide or this page and see if it will take it. Present this. All right, never mind. Let's move on because this is not what's most important. Oh, stop. Hold on. Here's what I will do. All right, my name is Anne-Marie Rabago, and I am a former solo practitioner. I hung a shingle right out of law school, pretty much. My story's a little convoluted, but I passed the bar in California in 2009. The next day, I started Rabago Law, and in 2013, Rabago Law became Rabago Business and Tax Law, APC. And in 2016, I closed up my law firm and I stopped practicing law. And from there, I fell into something that is called the legal incubator movement. And legal incubators were traditionally sponsored by law schools. At this point in time, you find legal incubators all across the country, sponsored by a variety of entities, from law schools to state bar associations to local bar associations, law libraries, courts, Supreme Court of Colorado, which is, I live in Denver, Colorado at this point in time. Supreme Court of Colorado supports or sponsors a legal incubator. And most programs have dual missions. They are designed to teach lawyers how to start law firms and also have an eye towards the access to justice gap, which I like to call the latent legal market, because the access to justice gap is a market. It is a potential base of clients who don't qualify for legal aid because they make too much money, but can't afford or can't financially support the way that lawyers traditionally operate practices with, a $10,000+ advance fee deposit into their IOLTA and then $400 an hour. And I don't know how many hours it's going to take, but we'll work through it and I'll bill you as we go. And with that being the traditional ways that law is practiced, many of our fellow citizens can't access lawyers. And so legal incubators are designed to try to help average citizens to get access to law and to lawyers and to courts and so forth, and lawyers, because there is truly a market potential there. It's just that it truly involves coming to your practice with intention and innovation and that approach. And so I worked for a legal incubator. I directed a legal incubator at California Western School of Law in San Diego. And then I moved to Austin, Texas, where I helped the State Bar of Texas launch the Texas Opportunity and Justice Incubator, which might come up a little bit more in our conversation. But at this point, I now am independent, and I do the same thing that I've done directing those two incubator programs, but one-on-one with lawyers across the country, so that I'm not under any particular sponsoring umbrella, but instead I can help the lawyers with all the things that we heard about in that first panel, which I loved. And thank you to the dean and to Dr. Hayes for that very poignant panel. Okay, while I go and work on trying to get this PowerPoint to come up properly, I'm going to hand this over to Taisha, and hopefully we'll get your picture and more about you.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm Taisha Kimbrough. I'm the managing attorney of Kimbrough Legal, where I help professionals navigate divorces and family law in Austin, Texas. I help them protect their children, assets, and peace. I'm located primarily in Austin, Texas, but we also have an office in San Antonio, Texas. And this year, I'm serving as a diversity fellow for GPSolo, and I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me today. And I also want to mention I served as a member of TOJI, the Texas Opportunity and Justice Incubator, which was directed by the amazing Anne-Marie Rabago once I launched my solo practice right after law school. And I guess now I'm not a solo. I do have some associates and support staff who work with me.
Oh, I do.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kelly Adams. I'm located in Chaddsford, Pennsylvania, about 20 miles south of Philadelphia, home of the Birds. Everybody here is an Eagles fan, so you don't have to sing the song. I won't make you do it. I am a solo practitioner of the firm Alpha Omega Law Firm, commitment and integrity from beginning to end. I'm a civil litigation firm. I do personal injury, some family law. I'm trying to get out of that, and a lot of consumer debt practice. Is there anything else fun fact about me? No, we'll learn. Okay, thank you very much for having me. I am this year's diversity director. I'm very happy to be here, and a couple of diversity fellows are here, so we're really excited about that.
Hello, my name is Danielle Hall. I'm from Topeka, Kansas, which is about an hour and 10 minutes away from here. So it was a real short jaunt for me today. My career has been a little interesting, a mix of traditional and some mix of non-traditional. I actually started off at a small firm doing civil litigation, and I did that for a couple of years before I decided that I wanted to go to our state bar association, where I ran our law office management assistance program. Stepping into practice, and there were two other attorneys in the firm that I worked for at the time. I was the one who did all of the tech stuff. That was about the time the bankruptcy courts went to mandatory e-filing. And through that process, though, that's when I discovered that I really enjoyed the management side of practice and wanted to help others learn about it, which is why I went to the Bar Association. From there, I did go over to our disciplinary administrator's office, where I prosecuted disciplinary cases and ran our attorney diversion program. Through that program, I got to work with a lot of lawyers who were really stressed, really overwhelmed, struggling with the law practice management side of the practice. And I really kind of got back into that focus. So I shifted from prosecuting to more helping some of the lawyers that were going through the diversion program at the time. So when the Lawyers Assistance Program, the executive director position opened up, I went in, talked to our court, said I was really interested, and what I wanted to bring with me was that law practice management background. Our state bar association was no longer funding the law management assistance program, and so essentially I brought it over to the lap, and now I talk a lot about the intersection of law practice management, our ethical obligations, and attorney well-being, because I do think it is very interconnected.
Good afternoon. My name is Mel Shaw. I am a solo practitioner in the great state of Iowa. My office is there are 3 Iowans here, well, 4, including myself, and so I'll introduce them in a little bit. They're not that important, but my name is Mel Shaw, and I practice primarily in estate planning, real estate, and business. And like some of the others on the panel, I started my law firm right out of law school in 2006. And since that time, I have been fortunate to have been surrounded by persons who support me professionally and in my bar service, including present here today, Henry Hamilton, who is chair of the GPSolo division, and some of you may not know, is the immediate past president of the Iowa State Bar Association. Alan Olson is here, and some of you know him. He is all things ABA, including in the House. Alan is one of our go-to persons in the ABA. Retired Judge Odell McGee is on my right there near the back. I have been fortunate to have made friends with him through Henry Hamilton, and also through each one of those persons, directly and indirectly. I have been able to serve this division, GPSolo division, and I will be president of the Iowa State Bar Association next June.
This one's weak. Okay.
Testing.
That we got. Okay. So what you're seeing on the screen right here is some data that I pulled together from the National Association of NALP. What is that? Somebody knows what that is. Thank you, law placement. So you all might remember, and depending how long it has been since you graduated from law school, that your law school reached out to you about 9 months after graduation, and they said, hey, where are you? What are you doing right now? What professional setting are you in? And if you'll tell us, how much money are you making? And, you know, the NALP is kind enough to pull that together from every graduating class and to report it out. And so these statistics are the lawyers who, at 9 months after graduation, reported to their law schools that they had started a solo practice. And you can see this trend, which is really pretty fascinating. And I've obviously looked into this data pretty readily. So we had in 2013, the largest number of law school graduates we've ever had in this country. And these are ABA law schools, by the way. And 46,776 law students graduated that year. And who remembers what was going on at that particular point in time? It'd been going on for a couple years, but it really hit the class of 2013. I heard, what'd you say, Professor? Say what? They could not get jobs. Yes, Danielle and I were just lamenting about this. I was fortunate enough to graduate around that time, as was she. And there were headlines. The ABA Journal had headlines about law students who were, or lawyers, actually, they even became licensed, who were accepting jobs for minimum wage. If you wanted to practice law, you had a law license, you pretty much had to start your own practice. And the programs that I have worked with were born out of that time, where law schools realized, as we all know, although I loved the panel this morning, that most schools aren't doing very much to help us know how to start a law firm, right? And yet, so the various statistics, no one's actually tracking this and reporting it out, which, because I think nobody really wants to look at the numbers, but about 75 to 80% of lawyers end up having an ownership interest in a law firm, often as solo practitioners, either early in their career or at some point in their career, yet we learn nothing really about how to start and own and operate and grow a business. And when I first was licensed, I feel like we were still having arguments about whether or not a law firm was a business. It was a profession. We weren't in business. But the reality is you know what, our Secretary of State and the IRS and your state tax agencies about admiring law, they think you're a business and they expect you to act like one, right? So what I want to ask this panel is, what did you do during law school as you prepared to come out to become a solo practitioner? Go for it, Mel.
The answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing. For the very point that you made, Anne-Marie, becoming a solo was not on my radar because it wasn't. I always thought that I would go and work for a large firm someplace. Houston was one of my target cities. I thought that that was going to happen for me, but it didn't. So to your question, nothing. And sometimes I lament that. I understand that law school curricula has changed since I graduated, and there are more components now. But a lot of what I learned the old-fashioned way.
They say experience is the greatest teacher, but the tuition is the costliest.
Yes, so I went to Baylor Law School, and a lot of students at my school, they would go and work for the big law firms. But I was very intentional, and I knew that I wanted to launch my own law firm. That was my goal, which also is why I went to Baylor. Baylor is a school that prepares people to be trial ready. And I thought that I would just become this boss trial lawyer. And granted, I am, but I'm also running a business. So I understand that my time is split. But I was intentional by one, I participated in a lot of internships and clerkships. So I made sure that I clerked for Greater Waco Legal Services. I worked for Judge Hoffman, who was a district court judge. I also interned with the Fourth Court of Appeals, and I interned with the DA's office. So I was one of those people that if there was an opportunity, I was grabbing it because I wanted to be able to hit the ground running. And I also read every single book that there was to read about law firm ownership. So I read Solo by Choice, How to Build a Law Firm. I was very intentional. I will admit, I was in my con law class sometimes working on my law firm business plan. I actually made a high A in that class. But anyway, I did whatever I thought would be beneficial. And another thing that I did was I was very intentional about networking. So when I worked for the different judges, I met a ton of amazing practitioners who I knew that I would one day be able to call on when I had my own practice. And actually, I see a few people in here like Christy Castle, Judge Moorhead. They're people that I met when I was working for Judge Hoffman in Dallas. And I know these are people who I can call on if I ever need something. So just being very intentional to network, because what do they say? Your net worth is your network. So those are a few things that I did.
We all answering this? Okay. Okay. I'm much like Mel. I did nothing to prepare myself for it. Actually, I didn't know. I thought I was going to be like Jalen Hurts' attorney. I wanted to be a big time in entertainment attorney. It still might be in the cards somewhere. Just he wasn't there when I came out in 2013. So what I knew about myself was that I did not want to be broke, if I could just speak candidly. And so I tapped into the natural entrepreneur that I am, and I realized that I have a skill to make money and create opportunity for myself. Now I need to use my knowledge and group them together and figure out how to make it work. And so I came out using the skills I already had, using the knowledge, and said, let's just go with it. I also surrounded myself around people that I felt like I could be beneficial to and that had some care for me. So I placed my firm in the heart of my community. And so people that I thought would support me, because even though we're surrounded by attorneys and people and law students and things when we're in school, a lot of people don't have access to attorneys. So I didn't realize once I became a lawyer that people were like, oh, you're a lawyer? And I'm like, oh, I'm a celebrity here. Like, what I mean is that you're now someone that they could call first. They don't have to Google you. So I put my firm in the heart of my community. I let the people in the church know that I was an attorney and that I would give all church members a discount. Well, hey, That's just what I did. and it worked. And it sustained my firm for the first 2 years. The majority of my clients came right from my community and then outsourced into referrals. And so that's what I did. I hope that answered the question. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to skip a few slides here. And of course, that's going to work now. Okay. So this is actually a little bit of a controversial topic, right? And we did a CLE with this earlier this year through the webinars, the ABA CLE webinars. In fact, you can go back and watch it. It's a slightly different panel. And in the comments, which if you're part of the CLE, you're seeing questions and comments in the panel that the people attending the CLE aren't in the platform that the ABA uses. But we got some hecklers, I guess I will say, in the comments talking about how no lawyer should ever start a law firm right out of law school, that they don't know enough, they aren't competent, they've got enough to do with trying to figure out the business of law. Y'all might be feeling this in your soul. Enough to figure out with the business of law, that you can't possibly, bridge your duty of legal competence and figuring out how to run a law firm. And so and there were comments coming in that the panelists could see as we were talking about what all of us in that panel as well had done. And so I think that it's important in settings like this to talk about how each of you bridged your competence gap, if you will. But I want to hear from Danielle on this as well, as someone who has sat in the chair of professional misconduct and disputes and so forth. So talk to us. She and I know a little bit what she's going to say, but talk to us about your perspective on this.
As a former regulator, I can say I disagree with just the across the board, no, you absolutely shouldn't do it. Does it take a lot of work to do? Absolutely, it does. And I think recognizing that and going into it and having a solid foundation and plan and doing some of what the other panelists have already talked about as far as networking, connecting, getting mentorship, having people that you can call when you do have those questions, since how you are a solo and you're going to need to make those connections. But I also think that if you're the right type of person that can plan, can anticipate kind of what it is that you're going to need to do in order to handle the task, then I most certainly think that you can do it. And a lot of it has to do with what are your resources and what are your connections to ensure in those times where you feel like you're lacking competency, whether it's on the business side or whether it's professionally in a representation, having those connections, I think, are going to be most important.
What did you do?
When I first started my practice, I think I worked even harder. I was always over prepared. So I think it's a matter of just really doing your due diligence and just making sure that you're always prepared. Granted, I was in court going against lawyers who have been practicing for 10 or 20 years. And respectfully, I did a better job because I was prepared. So I think it is important to get mentors. So if you do need some assistance, you can call on someone. And I think it's also important to know what your capacity is and not take one too much. So my first year of practice, I literally read the family law code from the front to the back. Like I knew the law, right? So, and again, just being prepared. So I think that it is absolutely possible to launch a law firm right out of law school and do a great job and be competent.
As for me, I think I did what a lot of attorneys still do, and that is immerse myself in CLEs abundantly. I did not have a library of materials when I started. I had the law books that I purchased, but they were only good, of course, for that particular course, right? And so I went to CLEs on subjects such as the top 10 things that judges do not want you to do or that you should do, right? I'm sure some of you have gone to those. And so I went to several of those. I went to CLEs in the practice areas where I wanted to focus: estate planning, tax, real estate and business. Just like Ms. Kimbrough said, I read the code for what that was worth. I read the code, and so I didn't know how to apply it. I knew what it said, but I needed that explanation, and I got a lot of that through the CLEs. I also, like many of you probably have done, I joined local ends of court, right? And so there are professional associations of attorneys who gather together on a periodic basis, once a month or however frequent it might be. And you have a discussion on a topic that's presented by a judge or another member of the bar. And it may not be an area in which you're familiar with, right? But I learned that way. And it's through that group, for example, in of court, I engaged myself with a mentor. As was said, it's important to have a mentor. And I remember feeling that I was a nuisance. And I'm saying this to say to you how you might change the trajectory of some new attorney's life. Through those associations, I would introduce myself and sometimes directly ask, hey, can I call you if I got a question about? And overwhelmingly, most lawyers said yes. There were some who were a little bit opaque and, but those who did, I called them, and I called them a lot. And I felt like I was annoying, but I didn't have the library of materials to go to. I had the CLE material, and that was a guidance. But sometimes you need to pull back the layer a little bit, and sometimes you need a form or explain this to me. So what I'm asking you to do is think about how you can, if you are not doing it already, how you can mentor a new attorney, an attorney that's in your state bar or that's in your community, that's in your church, your synagogue, or your mosque. Think about how you can influence the trajectory of that person's career. A kind word, a word of encouragement can be the seed of life to someone who's just starting their firm. And unless we recognize that the next generation of lawyers are coming right behind us, we will not leave this profession better than what we found it. And I think many of us want to do that very thing. One of the other things that I said, Ms. Adams mentioned that, she would get a lot of her clients from church, at least initially. My church members, they didn't pay me. They just thought I would do it for free. So, and so I did a lot of that too. And so, the old fashioned way, I'm cognizant of that rule. Every day I open a file, even today, I'm aware of this rule. I'm thinking about what I'm doing, trying not to mess it up, thinking about around the corner. Is there something I haven't thought about? Someone said to me when I first opened my practice, and I'll say this and I'll stop. A smart person is someone who sees a puddle of water and walks around it. An entrepreneur is someone who walks deep into the water without knowing exactly how deep it is. And so when we come to competence, I think about that. What is it that I'm about to do? Do I have the skill to do it? Do I need to partner with someone? And I'm doing that now on a few cases. And I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to do that. I'd much rather do that than to have some ethics committee send me a letter or send me a phone call and I have to respond.
I'll just say one more thing to that regard. If you read past the basic kind of black letter law of the rule and you get deep into the comments, you'll see in the comments that it does say, how do you become competent if you feel that you're not? And it's through study, it's through education, it's through partnering with somebody who may have the ability to give you that guidance. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yes, thank you, Danielle. I actually, the comments and some of the points are highlighted on the screen now because I too was focused on the rule. And at some point, as I was having these conversations, almost arguments in the face of what my career was at that point, I was like, no, there has to be more here. And so I went digging into the comments, and for sure, kind of what you said, Taisha. So sometimes, what does it say? A newly admitted lawyer can be as competent as a practitioner with long experience. Preparation. Kelly, did you want to add anything more?
We can go to the next question. I have to go over everybody else.
So competence is something that a newer lawyer maybe is knowledgeable enough to know they should be concerned about, and maybe isn't, but something that I think most people, young lawyer, law student thinking of this, or even experienced lawyers who are saying, oh, I've always wanted to start my own practice, hang a shingle, is where am I going to get clients? If I don't have a book of business that I'm bringing with me, which is never a given necessarily, right? We follow our rules. Then how am I going to get clients? So where does your, church, beyond church, where did your initial clients come from? How did you go about starting to develop a business?
So I said I went to my community. I was really big into like, oh gosh, I did a lot of volunteer work before I went to law school. And so I just told the people who I had relationships with that I was an attorney. And so it came from, and they still, the majority, 90% of my clients come from referrals of people I know. And that's where I get it from. I get clients from people that I know. Also, one of my mentors, Dan Chan, is in the room and he sends me clients. Granted, he keeps sending me family law clients and I need to be done with that. But, I have good relationships with my mentors. And honestly, and this is a plug, but GPSolo has been a great resource to me. I meet so many people here from all over, and you can call someone that's in Texas and they have a client that's in Pennsylvania and they think of you, and it goes both ways. And so I get clients just from relationships, organic relationships that I have with people. And then also we have these referral companies like ARAG, that they've been a sponsor here, I think, with us before, and they send us clients and it's free. I mean, you don't have to spend so much money. One of the challenges when you first come out and start your own practice is that it costs money to run a business. And so you have to try to figure out where are you going to put your money and make sure that you get a good return. And a lot of people say, put it in marketing, put it in marketing. And if you don't get that money back right away, you're just looking at an account that's being depleted. And now you're desperate for clients. You're on Facebook, like, anybody need a babysitter? I'll teach your child how to read the law. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is that tap into organic relationships that you have. People actually would rather do business with folks that they know and that they can trust. That's it.
May I jump in real quick? So you sort of started with this. One way, believe it or not, to get clients is volunteer pro bono. And I did that also back to the competence question. I didn't have enough business to fill up all of my days, all of my time. So I went and made myself available to the low income taxpayer clinic at the Legal Aid Society for 1 day a week. Through that, I learned some things I didn't know about how to practice before the IRS. I had an LLM in tax, but they didn't actually teach me that in my LLM program. And so I bridged some knowledge and some competence gaps. I met other tax practitioners because they also were giving time and volunteering at the low income taxpayer clinic. And I worked one-on-one with clients. So I got more comfortable and more confident in my abilities to interface with clients that way. And then finally, one of my biggest clients came through that. Technically, I think legal aid societies aren't supposed to refer clients to you, but I had, again, built a connection with the clinic director. And so this client kept contacting them, say, please, we need help. And he said, well, look, I can't help you because you're over our income level, but here's a lawyer that I work with that I trust. See if she can help you. And I worked with that client for years. So, that can also lead to paying business through referrals, which is another source. If look into your local bar associations, often are the sponsors, and state bars sometimes sponsor lawyer referral services. These are, and ARAG and legal insurance companies are ways to start to generate clients that don't cost you much or anything in the case of legal insurance companies. And I like to say that good clients beget more clients. So I know that hearing go out and network, that doesn't necessarily feel great when you're first starting. That is planting seeds today that you will sow in the future. And if you talk to experienced practitioners, in fact, all of us probably at this point would say, 90+% of our business comes from referrals, from prior clients, from other lawyers. But when you're first starting, you don't have that. So look for channels like pro bono, legal insurance, lawyer referral services that can help to get that. What's his name? The CEO of CLEO, Jack Newton, talks about a flywheel. And there really is sort of this momentum, but you got to get it started so that it will continue to build and to feed.
To carry on to your point, just for a brief moment, I recall, I'm saying this to law students who were thinking about starting their own practice. And this, it was a hard lesson that I learned. I tried to be all things to all people, and I could not be all things to all people. Remember that thing called the phone book? Am I the only one who remembers the phone book? Yeah, remember that thing? Wasn't always yellow, but sometimes it was. When I started out of law school, I had advertisements, family law, employment law, real estate, business, and that kind of goes maybe to the lead question of, what did you learn about entrepreneurship in law school? It didn't. And so I was not sure what exactly I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to practice law, but I had to find my footing. So that's the first thing I'll say about getting clients is you can't be all things to all people. The second thing I'll say is sometimes you have to kiss a lot of frogs. I remember going to a CLE when I first started, and the presenters, one went on to become an Iowa Supreme Court justice, but he was a trial lawyer, and he was talking about client selection and the importance of client selection. And when you're new, you don't know all of the elements of a file that stinks that you should turn away. Or sometimes you will take on a file that you probably shouldn't, but because of what you're called to do, you go ahead and you do that thing for that client because it's not so much as about the compensation, it's about serving the public. And so you're often weighing those things. But again, you cannot be all things to all people. For the young attorneys that are or aspiring attorneys in the room, remember that lesson that I had to learn the hard way. And then the last thing I'll say is, just by a show of hands, how many of you who are practicing are embracing some form of digital marketing, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, if you use LinkedIn, if you X, I guess I call it Twitter, but X. All right. So a lot of you. So I have shifted like many of you. In-person is probably still, or direct contact has been said, is probably one of the best measures of success for me and client referrals. But also thinking about on the digital side, there's only so much money. And making that value judgment about what to do. I will say there are some great resources that Thomson Reuters is here. Ms. Cubes is here. Thomson Reuters, as with a lot of others, they have platforms that will help you create your website, brand yourself, push out your messages on a regular basis, streamline your intake such that you're able to attract clients or you're creating a chat, right? Someone who's live to answer your calls. Those are the kind of things that I'm starting to move more into. I'm still doing what a lot of the panelists said, is meeting folks, participating in the bar, and giving of my time. But for those of us who may not want to do those things, digital marketing is it. But again, it's a cost return too.
I'll just add one more thing to consider, considering what state you may live in and what the nature of the need for lawyers looks like in your state. For instance, in the state I'm from, Kansas, we are having a real problem right now with having lawyers in our rural communities. And so as a result, rural communities are going to the law schools and they're saying, come move here because we have more clients than we have lawyers and there's money here to be had. And so looking at location as well may be something that you might consider when you're first starting out and trying to determine where you want to practice, particularly if there's a market that really needs lawyers in their community.
I love that. And I think we have a panel coming up talking about rural practice this afternoon and digital marketing after this one. So stay tuned for more on that. Okay. Taisha, did you want to say something? No. Okay. You also do digital marketing. And I think I remember your message was track your return on the investment. Absolutely. Don't just throw the money, which we're going to be talking about money in just a minute. In fact, that might be next. Yes, it is. Look at that. Let's talk about money. Now, Kelly, I'm not going to call you out, but you did say earlier, I did not want to be broke.
That's right.
So
that's absolutely right.
What did that look like for you?
Well, I went to law school in Arizona, so I moved back to Pennsylvania to sit for the bar. I had my family, and being broke would mean still living with my parents during that transition. So that had to stop immediately. Oh God, this is hard. Broke is a mentality for me. It wasn't necessarily what my bank account looked like. It just meant my state of mind, and then kind of giving up. So this is a hard question, actually. I don't know why it's so difficult.
It is hard.
So I just wanted to be sure that I was using my time wisely to try to make a living. Every day I might not have made money. Every week I might not have actually brought home money, but I was working towards it. So long as I was doing that, when it came in, I felt very successful. So yeah, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm not broke today, thank God. Yeah, it's 10 years, but
Yeah, it's and I should have couched all of this with, talking about money in the United States is taboo. Like we don't talk about money. We all have a relationship with money. I don't know, back to that first panel, and they were talking about getting in touch with yourself, right? As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and as a lawyer, like we need to understand our personal relationships with money, particularly if you're going to sit across from a client who is, potentially wanting to hire you, and to tell them how much you cost, right? And to get that dollar amount out of your mouth and just shut it. That is the best way to get your value, because I for years would, sit with a client money, and I would start talking, thinking about what I was going to quote as the fee. And then I'd start discounting myself in my head before I even opened my mouth. But over time, exploring my own, history and relationship with money, I came to the realization that was my internal dialogue, and it had nothing to do with what my value, what the service I was providing was worth, and what someone could actually afford to pay. I was making lots of assumptions about them that were based on my own mental space with money. So that's a first step, right? And then we have to deal with money as, back to what I said before, we're running businesses, and others expect us to be doing that in a financially responsible way.
Can I just comment on that really quick? So I did struggle at the beginning with saying that. I think I started off at $175 an hour, and I was like, that's I thought that was huge. And I was afraid to say it. I would say like 175, but I'll do 125. I don't know why I did that, but I did. It was like I was hustling myself until I just came down to it and said, you have a family and you have student loans, and this is how much you are worth. And that's just it. And I had to be okay with someone saying they couldn't afford it. And I had to be okay with someone saying, okay, either way, like just say it. And like you said, shut your mouth. And then all of that depended on what type of law I was practicing. So at the beginning, I was doing criminal law, and my clients had no problem paying that. In fact, it was a little cheap. And I went to pick up some money from one of my clients, and I was driving a Toyota Venza, which I love that car. And the first thing he said to me was, we're going to have to get you out of this car. So my car started to define my value. And this is like a real thing in criminal law and in personal injury law. I literally have two different vehicles that I drive. Now, this might be bad advice, but I'm just being honest. I have a car that I drive for work, and then I have my mom-mobile, Suburban. that I drive all the time, but I have a car that fits the image of the clients, because the clients that I serve now don't want an attorney that looks like they can't return money to them. And so, I mean, it's just the reality. But then when I have a family law client, I come out with the Suburban because I need to be relatable. And I know, are you guys just going to leave me out in the dust like any other attorney have this going on? Like, your car defines the value of your practice. So for the lawyers that are coming out, do not go out and buy like a Lamborghini or anything with your firm. Don't do that. But what I'm trying to say is be okay with your value, with valuing yourself. You're worth the money. You put the time in for law school. You put the time in to sit for the bar. If you took out student loans, you have that debt over you. It's okay. I am worth this. And if someone says they can't afford it, you tell them, like Gucci or Louis Vuitton, come back when you have the money. You don't agree? Mic drop.
Mic drop.
I'll chime in. Well, at least I'm doing this to not only make an impact, but to make an income as well. So it is so important that we value our services. I can't be in a situation where I'm pouring into others and protecting their children, assets, and peace, but I'm not taking care of at home or taking care of myself. And similar to Kelly, I still have law school debt. So it is so important that I value my services accordingly, right? We're not just working for free unless we're choosing to do so. So I'll do pro bono, but when I want to do it, not when someone is forcing me to do it. So I think it's so important that you really price your services according to like the expenses as well. So for example, when I'm analyzing like what I want my hourly rate to be or my retainer, I'm analyzing, there's a lot to it, but I do something called stock keeping units, where I'm really breaking down how much is costing me to deliver this service. And I'm making sure that I'm getting a profit in that process as well. Because if I'm not getting a profit, sure, I'm making that impact, but I'm not making an income. So it's so important to value your services accordingly. And it's so important to also collect and get your money. And I think a lot of attorneys do work, but they fail to bill clients, or they don't timely bill clients. So I do family law. So at my family law practice, we send bills twice a month. Okay, not just once a month. We send it every other Friday. So really it could be three times a month. And we're doing that for a few different reasons. One, clients like smaller bills. Two, clients can see when it's time to replenish, because I'm not going to be able to continue doing work for free. And let's hypothetically say a client cannot afford my services, right? It may be in that client's best interest to go get a lawyer that they can afford. So I think that is so important to value your services and make sure that you're collecting on the bills, on your invoices. And that's very important for me, because I also have a staff that I have to pay. And if I can't pay my staff, the only person that's being hurt in that situation is me, right? And I'm not trying to reduce my monthly pay. So it's so important to understand that we have to take care of ourselves in this process as well.
There's a question. No, please.
Law pay a lot of those services I can take advantage of. But they're embracing all of the medical community, like care credit and offering these where you, the lawyer, are almost able to get a line of credit and then draw on it and allow, and then your client has to payment with this third party vendor. Do you think it's something lawyers should embrace?
I'll take the first stab at that, Paul. Thank you for the question, which is, for law payment processing programs such as CLEO or LawPay, should you embrace that service? I use CLEO. I use LawPay separately. I use LawPay just for my payment processing, and that's all. Although I do know that they offer more. I use CLEO for my case management. And I do understand that CLEO offers financing and also credit card processing. I have kept them separate. I have at this point, I have decided not to do that, because why is I know my capacity to produce work. And if I'm producing at such a volume that someone has to finance it, then I'm not the right person for that client. They may be better served with someone else, maybe who's on the panel or at a larger firm, or someone who has a larger staff. I'm a solo practitioner with one staff paralegal. And so the work that I do, I'm trying to be transparent with my clients, and I tell them about how long they can expect the thing to be produced. If it's a trust or a will or what have you, I'm telling them about how long, and I'm asking them to sign a representation agreement, which how many of you use regularly use a representation agreement? Those are some of the most difficult things to do on a regular basis. I'm speaking for myself. I know the importance of them, and I know it cements the boundaries of the relationship and what's going to be done. But, you know, do you have a client sign an engagement agreement if you're drafting a deed? Really? Or do you have some are saying yes, you know, some are saying if it is minute as a transaction where I'm preparing a deed for you, and that's great. I don't. It's a function of staff, right? And I know that this one item is only going to take me, Paul, X amount of time, so I don't do personal injury or any accidents, right? And so I don't have that. I don't have that worry, whereas I need to make sure that I'm paying the third parties. But that's me. I've decided not to use that. And I'm a recent CLE user, and I made that decision. Anyone else?
I'll chime in about your question about financing. So I know with Law Pay Credit, that is like outside of my firm. That has nothing to do with me. So I see it as it's none of my business necessarily, like how the client gets funds to pay for me. I mean, of course, I'm not going to encourage them to do anything illegal, of course, right? But whether they use some sort of financing source, or they borrow from a family member or friend, or use some sort, like there is a, Anne-Marie and I were just talking about Justice for Me. I don't know how broad it is, but that's a financing program where people also can finance their legal matters. So there's other programs that are similar to that. And I encourage clients to find the money as they best see fit. So I don't have any issue using those sort of financing, or clients using those sort of financing sources. And again, this is an exchange of value, right? So I'm delivering value to my clients by helping them protect their children's assets and peace. So they have to pay me using however they can find the money.
Without making a direct comment about LawPay's product, which was backed by Affirm, which you all, if you haven't seen what LawPay is doing, Affirm also is a way you can buy things from Walmart, right? Mm-hmm. As it is, borrowing money comes at a cost, right? And one of the things about that product, to me, as someone with a heart for access to justice, is that the rates that are being charged to the client seem not predatory, but high, kind of high. Maybe not higher necessarily than a credit card if they're carrying a balance, but still higher. And they're charging the lawyer, I think, 4%, so more than a credit card costs. So I would personally, if I were practicing and taking on clients, look at that. The Justice for Me program is, I've done some work for them, so this is not as a consultant, so this is not me advertising them. They work in like 12 of the states, and it's justiceforme.com, I think. The interest rate they charge to a client is significantly lower than what the LawPay product is. And because they're charging lawyers more, they charge a lawyer 15%. But the client is it's like 10%, but if you pay it off in a year, then it's 0%. So they are also more in the vein of trying to work in an access to justice bent. Do you have thoughts on that, Danielle?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you're looking at alternative funding for clients, or whether it's the lawyer who's also looking at alternative funding, the most important thing is do your homework, right? When we start talking about these new kind of mechanisms that are out there. And then on top of that, knowing the difference, right? There's a difference when it is a loan to the client versus when the lawyer's involved in it, because there's these things called firm loans, sometimes is what they're called when you're working with these third-party kind of investors. And so really doing the homework on that, knowing the difference of it. And then I would also recommend the ABA put out, I believe it's 484 is the guidance for some of those types of alternative fundings that can really help you navigate whether or not it's right for your firm and whether or not it's ethical in your state as well. Might look into that with your regulators, because this has caused kind of a big debate kind of at the state level on who thinks it's okay and who still kind of has some qualms about if it's this, then probably not. But if it's that, then it might be okay.
Yeah, there are about 8 state ethics opinions that have been published. And if our contact information will be available in a minute. And if you want to know those opinions, just shoot me an email and I can get you those opinions.
It looks like there is at least one question from the audience. Mr. Hamilton?
Yeah, this has been wonderful. And as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking other things, but one of the things that we're doing with the division as far as our long-range planning is we're starting to meet people where they are. And as you said, 70 to 80% of the attorneys in America, doesn't Melvin say anyway? 70 to 80% of the attorneys in America are solo and small firms. And so they've made these decisions, whether their first year, second year, third year, 5 years out, 10 years out, or 15 years out. And on our website, we're going to meet people where they are, where are you in your career, and what kind of considerations you need to make in starting a solo and small firm practice. So I want to talk to you all for our law students today, looking back, where should your head be if you want to eventually have a solo and small firm practice the week after graduation? Where should your head be your first year, second year, and third year?
Who wants to take that one? I guess I'll go first. Sure. I'll go first, and certainly I welcome the other comments in the time that we have remaining, less than 5 minutes or so. If you're a second or a third year student in law school thinking about hanging out your own shingle, think, one, what is it that you want to practice? Again, you can't be all things to all people. So get an idea or finalize the area of law you want to practice. Second, think about the jurisdiction you want to practice in. You can be a big fish in a small pond, or you can be a small fish in a big pond. It's up to you. So think about the state or the city, the town, right? Think about what motivates you. Why are you practicing law? If it is for the dollar, it may be elusive. If it is truly for helping persons, then maybe you found your calling. And you can combine those two, but I don't think money is the leader. Money could be the one that takes you over the cliff. The last thing I'll say is think about economics. So understanding, how much is it going to take to run a law firm? You will find a lot of state bar organizations have surveys about how much a lawyer makes, depending on the size of practice, the years of experience, their age, and other factors. You also may find this material at NALP. So you may find it in NALP, right? Look there. Don't be afraid to go see your career services office and ask folks there. And then finally, talk to your classmates and colleagues. If they're going to firms, ask them how much they may be making an hour. You may not be making the same amount, but at least you'll know what the rate is in the marketplace. For those of you who didn't hear it, Joan Schwartz just said the state of Missouri provides an economic survey. It's updated every 2 years, and you can find it online at probably Missouri Bar. at MoBar. You can find it at MoBar.
She said, see Joan, she'd be happy to send it to you. Okay, here's my quick advice. One, if your law school has the opportunity to take courses on law practice management, legal technology, take those courses. The other thing I would recommend is I'm going to make a plug for the practice management programs. If you have access to one in your state, they not only service attorneys, but they also service law students. So you can get some help from those folks who provide the help to the lawyers who will help you set up your practice, walk through those steps, and start thinking about a business plan. That can be key in documenting some of these things that have already been recommended that you think about, and putting pen to paper can be really helpful. It can also be really helpful when you start thinking about how you're going to finance your practice, because a business plan may be required depending upon how you're going to get the funding. And so start working on that now, so that way when you're ready to go, you've got your plan in place.
Danielle, did we tell them to join the ABA, YLD, and GPSolo division? We didn't tell them. We need to tell them. We need to tell them to join the ABA, Young Lawyers Division, and the ABA General Practice and Solo Division. Those are the two fundamental groups that you absolutely, hands down, should look at. I would be remiss if I didn't mention them. And had I done that out of law school, I think I would be in a better place today.
I would also add LP divisions.
I actually did plug GPSolo. You weren't listening to me, Mel, but I actually did plug them. I just wanted to say that. Actually, and I do want to say this, you have your big picture plan. You're going to have your goals. You're going to have your, Taisha said she was in con law writing down her business plan. You're going to have all of this, but I want you to keep it and give yourself grace to grow into it, because sometimes when you come right out, you're ready to be in that brick and mortar, that $4,000 a month, rented space. You want all of the things, and it can be overwhelming. So give yourself grace to grow to your goal, and know that you can just do this one thing that you're really good at and start off with that and just keep growing and keep growing. And I think if I had just given myself that pep talk, I might have saved myself from a little bit of debt the first couple of years that I didn't need to be in. And I would have enjoyed the first couple of years of practice. So just give yourself the grace to grow.
Yeah,
They do.
Yeah.
To turn away. Great advice.
Yep, exactly.
My advice is to really understand and get clear on your why, because that's going to be your guiding principle, especially when you're dealing with those hard first few months, and it will just help you put everything into perspective. But I also think, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but just networking, doing internships and clerkships are really good to get solid hands-on experience. And we are in the age of technology and Google, so definitely utilize online resources. And I know most state bars also have a ton of practice management resources, so be intentional to utilize that as you're just really trying to figure out what it takes to launch your practice.
I would say, yes, get hands-on experience as much as you can. I think throughout law school and since then, I have more in my life figured out the things I didn't want to do versus the things that I did want to do. And sometimes it's difficult to give yourself permission to say, for example, I worked really hard and I got a law degree and I started a law firm and I climbed a mountain I really didn't want to climb. And you know what? I don't want to be at the top of this mountain and I don't want to be a practicing lawyer. And that was an existential crisis for me because of everything I had put into it and built. But to wake up one day and say, I don't want what I thought I wanted is actually okay. And you'll get through it. And to plug or LAP programs, again, many of them will talk to you and help you with resources in that realm as well. So give yourself, I think you said grace, but permission to be on a journey and to recognize that sometimes the destination isn't what you thought it would be. And that there are other routes. There are so many things we can do with law degrees besides just practicing law. And, you know, I'm here at ABA GPSolo, not practicing. Several of us are that. 2 of us are not practicing lawyers per se. We have gone the alternative routes of profession. So the world is your oyster. Use it. Last thing I will say is, and I'll leave this up for a little bit, there's a list of resources, readings and podcasts and things, and also these slides in a PDF form are at this QR code. So to snap that, and please, I think I speak for all of us, reach out, and we'll be around also for the weekend. So thank you for being with us. Thank you.